What is your floor? Because your first why isn't really your why. It's your why, and your purpose is it should evoke emotion in you. We seek that external validation from other people or trusted people to be like, oh yeah, that is totally who you are. That is totally my experience of you. But that's the wrong guidance that you're listening to. It's within. You know within you what your purpose is, what your why is. And what's inside is what connects you to that higher entity, that higher being, which, truth bomb, everybody listening, you want a quantum leap? It's going to take faith. It's going to take you surrendering and listening to the inner guidance that's coming from somewhere else. It's not coming from your head. It's coming from inside. It's coming from your being. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. How are you all doing today? As a reminder, please do not forget to hit subscribe so that you do not miss a single episode, because one is released every single week. And in order to help more people find this podcast, please leave me a 5-star rating. I so appreciate it. Well, I am really excited about today's episode because I am here with Carolini Arco. Hello, Carolini. How are you?
Hello, Wendy. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God. You are so welcome. And it truly is an honor for you to be here. You guys, Carolini and I met, maybe it was like a month or so ago. I feel like it was just like destined divine intervention for our paths to cross. And I am really looking forward to our conversation today. And you guys, you are going to want to stop your multitasking and really sit down and listen to this episode today. Or if you're out on a walk, turn up the volume, turn off all the other distractions, because Carolini and I are going to talk to you guys today about how the sacred pause is actually preparing you to quantum leap. So before we dive into this juicy conversation today, I want to share a little bit more with you all about Carolini. So she is a spiritual mentor, a Reiki Master Teacher, a past lives healer, an ICF ACC Life Coach, and a Breathwork Facilitator. She stands for human evolution and believes that the best way to create change is by awakening personal power and self-leadership. Her teachings on spiritual ascension, manifestation, and emotional alchemy have impacted over 4,000 clients in the 7 years that she's been committed to doing this work. She runs her global company, Arco, from a tropical island south of Brazil. I'm so jealous. And is proud to be a leader for all light workers, actively bridging heaven on earth. It's so beautiful. Thank you for being here today. And I would love for you to share your powerful story of how it was that the sacred pause really allowed you to step into your dream reality.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction as well, Wendy. There's so many episodes or so many chapters that I could go in here, but I think we can talk about the sacred pause right before I became a spiritual mentor. So to give some context, I was born in the south of Brazil, and through a variety of mysterious circumstances, I was called to immigrate to Canada by the age of 23 years old. I never had a proper college education. I'm not by any means the traditional style of academic person. And I found myself working at a sandwich shop in Canada, where I was literally stuck for 3 years while I was waiting for my papers to come through. And that was a moment of an incredible pause, because I had no idea what was coming ahead of me. I had no idea of who I would become. And looking back at it now, I think it was something that was very needed, because I feel that until we pause, we will not be able to hear our inner guidance. We will not be able to hear what truth is for us. If we're talking about like a quantum leap, my life really quantum leaped after I left that restaurant. I became a spiritual mentor. Like, my business, thank God, is very successful. I live a really good life. But for you to quantum leap, it takes a lot of energy. You need to have so much strength to actually step into that new reality. And so often when we are so distracted by the shoulds and everything that is around us, we don't actually have that energy to take that leap. I think the sacred pause is meant to make us stop so we can gather energy before we advance forward. And the only way that we can mess that up is by giving a meaning that pausing is wrong or that there is something wrong, and spending the energy trying to fix it rather than just conserve it for what's coming.
That's powerful, because I always say, like, I feel like people think that the pause means that, like, halted, stopped. And I always say that there's still energy and momentum in the pause. So could you share a little bit about, when you were in that pause? And I know that that wasn't the only one that you experienced in your life. I know that was the first, but what did you go through? Like, what was that experience like for you? Like, real, authentic, like, how did you work through that? And what led to the breakthroughs for you in those moments?
I think for me, what categorizes as a pause is a moment where you don't know what your truth is anymore. So that manifests as, I don't know what I want. I don't know where I'm going, like, I don't know who I am, really. Because when we don't know what we want, it basically says, I don't know who I am. It was really hard to come into that point of accepting that I didn't know, because you're going to try to grasp into what you do know, like tooth and nails endlessly. And that creates so much resistance, and the resistance creates the suffering, which I think as well, like I was the kind of person during my pauses, I had to experience like an intense amount of suffering. I had to experience so much resistance until we got to a point where I have no other choice but to surrender. I have to let this go. I have to be in the unknown. And the unknown is really a place of inner intimacy. So my process has always been, I notice that I don't know what is truth anymore. I don't know what I want anymore. I experience that really deep primal level resistance to it. And now, I'm a little bit better that when I start getting there, I'm like, okay, really now I need to let go. I need to go into the unknown. I need to surrender. But in the past, like I stayed there for quite a while until it became bigger and bigger and bigger. Once I accept the fact that I do not know and I stop making not knowing the wrong thing, I allow the not knowing to be the truth. And I don't need to rush it to know. You get what I mean? Like the not knowing space. Once I allow myself to stay in the not knowing and not judge it, then I can connect back to inner intimacy, to the truths that are actually coming out. And normally these are very abstract truths. It's not like I surrender into the unknown and now like the first thing, this is what I need to do next. This is where my business needs to go next. This is where no, like at first it's like, remember the truth that you were cared for no matter what. That's all that you need to know. You don't need to know anything else, no details, but that truth. Or the truth of, like, remember the truth that you are love. Remember the truth that you are love. And it's almost like the longer you stay in the unknown, and the only thing that you're really using as your anchor is your inner intimacy, these little truths start coming out and they start forming a thread. And that thread eventually becomes a new reality, but you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to listen. It is not a moment for self-righteousness. It is not a moment to hold on. It is not a moment for any should. It's a moment of, I listen. And every time that I've listened to that, like honestly, what has come on the other side has been absolutely mind-blowing. It's been beyond what I could possibly imagine, because what is created on the other side has that deep layer of truth to it. It is not something momentary. It's not something temporary of like, oh, I think this is the right thing to do, so let's go. It's just like, no, there's truth here. And when I act on truth, literally miracles manifest.
Yeah. And I think so many of us I'm hearing you say it's really about the surrender, right? Surrendering that what is happening for us. And it really is about paying attention to the call. And sometimes it's not sometimes. The call is never what you expect it to be. It's never going to look the way that you think it is supposed to look, right? So how have those moments that you've listened, right? Either you or your clients that you've worked with, I'm curious if you could share some examples of how just listening and paying attention, even when the call feels painful or the opposite of what it is that you were expecting? And then how did that shift you? Like, what did that create for you instead? Because here's the thing, right? It's like we were talking before we hit record, and I was mentioning that I'm reading a book right now. And we can sit here and choose to be a victim of what we think is happening to us, right? We can sit here and think that, like, you ask for one thing, but the universe is bringing you something different. But yet, what if what it's still bringing you is exactly what you've asked for? Either the path is, or it's not either. It's the path is different, right, than what it was that you could have thought. But there's someone higher than us that's working for us. And so when we listen to the calls, right, in the pause, because that's when you hear them, right, it ends up creating these shifts for us that, yeah, we may not see them coming. It may not look the way we thought they were going to look. And the surrender is required in order for us to see through, and it's going to look even more beautiful than we could have ever imagined on the other side, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Is like so many of us, I don't think we have a big enough context for why we are going through life. I think for many of us, like that context is quite small. So it's like, I'm going through life to survive, or I'm going through life to achieve certain goals that I have in this lifetime. Right. I think when you go through life through a bigger context of, I'm here to fulfill a soul purpose. And when we're talking about soul, it's like we're never going to know fully what the soul wants of us. We're very limited as human beings. So if we know, and if we are decided that I'm here to live through my soul purpose, we know that, it doesn't matter whatever path that's going to take us, I am going to be living my soul purpose through that path. And if there is a moment of recalibration where something changes, is really just another way to be living my soul purpose. It doesn't mean that anything went wrong. But I think to have this conversation, we have to have such a strong sense of the self. Like, what is the self? Who you are, beyond your circumstances, beyond your accolades, beyond the titles that you use for yourself, because that is the thing that will keep you going through all of these changes. And I actually think that these moments of the pause, they are really saying, like, forget who you thought you were. Forget the avatar that you put for yourself and actually come back to who you really were. And for me, that has been, one of the biggest gifts that I have received is I've been an actress, I've been a sandwich maker, I've been an assistant, I've been a coach and a mentor. And through all of these things, I can see how I was still me underneath it all. How I was still living my soul purpose through it all. And now, I'm a mentor. Maybe tomorrow I'm going to be a mother. I don't know what's coming next. But what I do know is I'm still going to be living through my soul purpose. I'm still going to be me. And that's something that, like, once you know that, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you. Like, that's kind of like the ultimate level of connection with yourself and with spirit, or whatever you want to call it. So I feel like a lot of the times, like, we need the recalibration because you need to have your ego broken down. Who you thought you were is not even close to who you're meant to be. I remember when I started my business in Portuguese because I'm originally from Brazil and that's my first language. And I felt self-conscious speaking English, because I have an accent and all of that. That was quite a journey, Wendy. My first ever launch, I had like 1,000 people in my launch, completely organic. I freaked out. I was like, wow, this is crazy. I thought I was going to have like maybe 40 people. I had 1,000 people joining my very first launch. And yet, like, the money was so thin. I didn't know how to make money. I didn't know how to ask for what I wanted. I didn't know how to sell. I lacked those skills, right? So for 3 years, I was like invested on that business. I'm like, no, this is the thing that I meant to do. And I know this, and I received all these confirmations, but I wasn't making money. And I had to come into the moment of like a sacred pause, a really deep sacred pause, looking around and seeing this is not working. I thought I knew I was meant to do this, but maybe I'm not. And in that sacred pause, a voice kind of told me, you need to start speaking English. You need to go to a different market. And I was quite terrified, but, I listened. An opportunity presented itself to me to speak at a group of 3,000 people at the time. I gave a speech, and by the end of it, I closed the client that paid me in one client, the first time, the equivalent of everything that I had made the year prior. But if I didn't pause, if I didn't have the like sacred redirection, I wouldn't know that my voice is meant to speak in English. I wouldn't know that there's more people that are meant to impact in a different market, And I think the pause is really here for that. It's like, well, there's something even better for you, but are you willing to listen? Or are you going to be fighting against me? Are you going to be fighting and saying, this is the way that things should go?
Yeah. And I think so many of us, we resist, right? There's so much resistance in these moments of pause because there's discomfort in them, right? Like you got the message, speak in English, and you're like, wait, I'm supposed to do what? Like in that moment, you got uncomfortable information about something that you were told to do that felt out of your comfort zone. It felt out of your wheelhouse. You didn't understand, and yet you trusted and you tried, right? I think we get so caught up in our heads, like our heads make up these stories that tell us that we're going to fail. That's ego, right? Our ego is telling us that we're going to fail. And I think that what is so hard for so many people is that in those moments of transition or difficulty, it's so hard to stay in that bigger context. Do you have like, what are some tools maybe, or like, how do you talk yourself sort of through those moments when you know you're about to step into a shift?
Yeah. I think the first question, and this is a question to ponder, it's not a question that you're going to like ask the question and have a straight answer and just like, okay, this is my answer and I'm going to stay with this answer forever. Like, it's not that. It's a question to ponder. It's a question to continue having a relationship with the question. And the question is, why am I here? Why am I here? Today, why am I here? Tomorrow, why am I here? The next day. The more you stay with that question, the more you're going to discover what is that context, what is that thread that waves through everything you do, that waves through everything you are. And once you know that, once you have a glimpse of that, that will make it so much easier to get grounded again when the mind is going crazy, because that becomes your anchor. Your why becomes your anchor. And the second question that is closely related to that, to ask yourself is, what do I know to be truth? Timeless. What do I know to be truth? Those things are anchors, right? And in these moments when the mind is going like absolutely insane and is going about 1,000 miles an hour, what we need an anchor so we can come back into the body. So when I know why I'm here, I have that as an anchor, right? Like I have an answer, even if it's vague, but I can feel the truth in that answer. I can feel the reality in that answer. That brings me back into my body. And in the body, we can feel the discomfort. Discomfort is a very normal part of the human experience. We will navigate it. We will have to scream. We'll have to cry. We'll have to like do certain somatic body level things. But the mind is not going to be in charge anymore because you're back in the body. Right. You're anchored back in the body. So I think that's a huge key in these moments is, can I disconnect what I'm feeling from what I'm thinking? I can handle a discomfort emotion. What is really taking me off guard is the thoughts, is the crazy stories that the mind is creating. It's not even the uncomfortable emotion that I'm feeling. It's the stories that my mind is creating. So I'm going to go back into my body so these stories don't become as loud.
So I'm curious, even globally, how what your perspective is on this. I feel like we live in a world that rewards for fast pace, right? Checking stuff off the list, feeling accomplished at the end of the day. I've juggled 15 balls in the air today, right? There's this reward. There's a medal that you think you get at the end of the day for the number of things that you crossed off your to-do list. And I'm curious to know from your perspective, why do you think people overlook the power of the pause, right? And what can they do to shift, right? Make it more intentional as a part of their life. And I'm curious to know, like, is it the same where you live, and what have you seen with your clients?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's the same. Everybody's like running like a headless chicken everywhere and trying to the goalpost.
Right.
That is completely invisible. I think in some level that was very intentionally designed to keep people away from their power, because you can only find your power when in your pause, Yeah. And one of the things that we crave so much experiencing is the feeling of worthiness, is knowing that we are worthy, that we belong, because worthiness means that we belong. And we all have this like deep instinctual desire to feel like we belong. So it keeps us in like a headless spin. So we don't really connect to that. And it's something that I work with my clients a lot, is in understanding that these stories are not actually yours. It's not actually your truth. The belief that you need to work like crazy in order to achieve something is not actually you. That's a conditioning that you have received. So where have you received that conditioning from? I think you have to start there. You have to start to like really asking yourself, is this me or has this been imposed on me? You can't just assume that this is my belief. No, like where did I pick this up from? Where haven't I gotten it from? And really like honestly answer your, so we have some questions here, right? Why am I here? What is my truth? What is important to me? What is really important to me?
And how does that tie back to people knowing what their purpose is, right? Like our purpose is what drives us every day, but how does connecting deeper into that, why is that important to answering these questions or even providing the answer to what your purpose is?
These questions will make you live on purpose, because living on purpose is nothing more than being intentional with what you do.
Right.
And once you know your why, once you know what's important to you, you're going to be intentional. The actions that you're going to take from there will carry this thread of intention, because you know why you're doing them. You know why it is important to me. And that's really like what living your purpose is, right? Like living your purpose in the end of the day is like being true to yourself, because your gifts express from there, like your talents express from there. So I also think that if you have any idea that your purpose is something outside of you, like something that you do, you know, like, or a title that you have, that will limit the amount of connection that you experience so much, because purpose is really who you are.
Yeah.
And how aligned are you in that in any moments?
Well, and don't you think that people associate their purpose with doing, but it's actually about who you're being?
Yeah, exactly. That's the mind trap. And that's like, if we're talking about these longer pauses, right? Like when life asks you, you have to pause. You have to pause. You have to look at this. You can't escape it anymore. That's really what they're doing, is like they're getting you out of the mind and into the body, into the soul, into what's deeper than just the mind.
But don't you think that people don't go deeper because they don't keep asking the question, why? Like I always call it like finding your bottom. Like, what is your bottom? What is your floor? Right? Because your first why isn't really your why, right?
Exactly.
It's your why, and your purpose is, it should evoke emotion in you, right? And I feel like it's almost like we seek that external validation from other people or trusted people to be like, oh yeah, that is totally who you are. That is totally my experience of you. But that's the wrong guidance that you're listening to, right? It's within. You know within you what your purpose is, what your why is. And what's inside is what connects you to that higher entity, that higher being, which, truth bomb, everybody listening, you want a quantum leap? It's going to take faith. It's going to take you surrendering and listening to the inner guidance that's coming from somewhere else. It's not coming from your head, right? It's coming from inside. It's coming from your being. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, or even just your experience.
Well, I think people don't go deep because the first layer of going deep will be a layer of discomfort.
Always.
Always, like once you actually stop and be true to yourself, you're going to find your shadows, you're going to find your fears, you're going to find the things that you thought that were the truth that suddenly are not the truth. You're going to find discomfort, and people run away from the discomfort like they run from the cross,
Yeah.
So I think that's why I think like developing the ability, and that's something that is so essential for all of us human beings in the planet right now, is developing the ability to be at peace in the discomfort, to be okay in the discomfort, to stretch ourselves, to be able to say, I am uncomfortable and I'm still okay. I'm still safe. I'm still loved, I think my experiences have always come back into this point. It has always come back into who are you when your mind is not leading.
And I think that that's where the discomfort lays, because I feel like we are that disconnected. I feel like many of us are that disconnected. So let me ask you this as we bring our episode to a close. I mean, what would you offer to somebody listening today who is either in resistance of the pause or wondering what to do in the pause, right? What would you say to help them embrace the moment of the pause, that sacred pause, and really to surrender and trust the process?
I think what will help is have a long-term vision for where your life is going. You don't need to know all the details, but know who you want to become And know that where you're at is a moment, like it's really a phase. This is not forever. This is not the make it or break it moment. I don't believe we have, make it or break it moments. You can always pivot. You can always change. So if you can see this as what it is a phase, is a cycle, is one moment in time, and that will change. That will help a lot, have a longer term perspective around it. And then while you're in it, see this time as the biggest blessing, as the time where your energy that was going everywhere, that was getting distracted, simply cannot anymore. So it has to come back to you. And the moment it comes back to you, you're going to find deeper levels of truth for you. So see that as a blessing. Can you see that as a blessing? Can you take it and be like, I'm so blessed that I have this pause now where more is showing up to me, and work on this really physical body level, sitting with discomfort. Physical body level. I notice discomfort. Instead of like letting my mind run crazy, let me bring into the body. Where is it? Okay. What shape does it have? What color does it have? Okay, now I'm getting really clear. This is what discomfort feels like in the physical body. Stay there. Don't rush it. It sounds simple, but the more that you do that, the more you're going to see that you're like, it's actually not even that scary. You can lead life with both. You can lead with discomfort and gratitude.
Well, you have to. I mean, that's just the reality, right? And
Yes.
I think that that's beautiful advice because, everybody listening, I'm telling you, stop pulling yourself out of the discomfort. You're literally delaying what is rightfully yours. Your abundance, I always say you have to feel through to get to the other side. The acceleration is in sitting in it. It is about being in the discomfort that is going to accelerate what it is that you want to create.
Yeah. And I will say this is not easy. This is not easy work. Like normally
No.
these moments of pause, like honestly, I've had moments of pause where it took me 4 months, like earlier this year, like I had a moment of like a sacred pause that it took me 4 months. It is not easy. And there's also something really beautiful to be said about doing things that are hard. There's also something really beautiful about saying, I'm going to go through this and it is hard. And I'm not going to stop trying to pretend that it isn't hard. I'm going to become the kind of person who says, yes, it is hard and I mean it. Because that's resilience. Too, you're meant to develop resilience in these moments. Why would you waste such a beautiful opportunity? To find resilience, to find your truth, to be in touch with who you really are, like that's the gift of the freaking pause. Obviously, you're going to quantum leap when you come out of it. The only way you're not going to quantum leap is if you're trying to hold on to who you are. But if you go for it, your life cannot be the same once you go through something like that. It just cannot. What a gift you're at.
And I'm here to tell everybody listening, and I would bet that you feel the same way. What is on the other side is way better than what you're even thinking it could be.
And it's not going to be better because the circumstances will be better. It will be better because now you felt the discomfort. You learn how to be with your emotions. Now you're going to be able to really learn how to be in gratitude. You're going to be able to really learn how to be in appreciation. You've understood what not enoughness is like. Now you're going to be really able to feel how enough life is. That's why it's going to be better. Not just because the circumstances will be better, which I do believe for you that it will, but because you're going to go through life in a better, more present, more intentional way. So it cannot not be better.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad you brought in gratitude at the end of this, because ultimately, like, that is, in my opinion, the highest frequency that any of us can really achieve. So Carolini, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. And I want to make sure that all of our listeners know where to find you, how to find you. So please share with everybody how they can connect.
Yes, please come hang out with me on Facebook, Carolini Arco. You can spell it as Caroline Arco, ARCO, on our Instagram, Arco Teachings. Send me a DM if this episode has touched you in any way. I would love to hear. And I'm also a very open person. So do get in touch. I love to meet the people who are in my world. Thank you so much for having me, Wendy.
Oh my God, I love you so much. Thank you for being here. And everybody, all of her information and links can be found in our show notes. So you guys can connect with her on social, as well as check out her amazing website. And as you guys know, with every single one of my episodes, my goal is to support each and every one of you in finding what is your power in the pause, because ultimately, as we've talked about today, that is where the quantum leap is going to exist for every single one of you. So trust that in the pause, there is acceleration and there is something even better on the other side. Thank you all for tuning into today's episode. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media, Wendy Page Sterling, Facebook, Instagram, all the goodies. And also, please feel free to reach out, share what you guys think about today's episode. Even better, share this episode with someone you know who could benefit from listening to our conversation today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sending you all so much love and light always. Mwah. Bye, everybody.